So we're talking about expansion, modernization, digitization, giving the best experience to a child. All of this costs money. Now, where is it going to come from? Obviously, we have to do a lot of financial planning and maybe even take external finance. Let me ask Dr. Mishra that the 65 schools that he's helped come up, what does he really look at it in terms of the importance of this particular aspect? And how do schools actually go about doing it?
So money has a great characteristic that it is never enough, right? So I think while we do anything for that matter, anything that we do which involves money, usually it's never enough. And I think I've seen the growth of schools ever since 2006. Uh, Banks used to support schools. They used to lend money, and I think failure of engineering colleges in 2010, 11 kind of made banks to think that education lending is not really a great thing. And I think after 2015, 16, even schools started failing. So currently banks, currently schools are in the negative list in terms of banks lending it to institutions, but that doesn't solve the purpose. Expansion needs money, so people go to unorganized money lending, which is not really the greatest thing to do, because the kind of so my experience is, a new school, 5 years IRR is never going to be more than 5-6%, and 10 years IRR is never going to be more than 10-11%, which is just about the bank interest rates. That's why we say that education is not a bankable project. So I think, in my understanding, school owners should have at least 50-60% of the capital investment out of their own retained earnings or through their own sources, on which they shouldn't be calculating the interest. And the remaining can be funded via the NBFCs or institutions which are not really bank, or even if a bank is willing to lend you money, why not? But I think having bank as a partner is, or any NBFC as a partner, is a boon to an institution which is credible, has a proven track record, and needs capital not to establish but to grow. So I think my understanding is that schools should look at institutional investors, or NBFCs or banks for their growth.
So plan well, but don't be shy of taking external help in terms of finance, so long as you kind of stick to the basic parameters and not demand too much.
So KV sir, let's do a role reversal now. You've been asking us questions, and we know that you have 30 years of experience in banking and financial sector, handling various portfolios, and you mentioned that decent amount of about 25%, if I'm not wrong, of your asset book is KV sir. As a founder of a financial institution, what do you advise to these affordable private schools or budget schools? How should they plan their finances?
I think it's so important to understand this, because at the end of the day, we are talking about schools being a social infrastructure, providing something which is important for the society and so on and so forth. But all of that costs money, as I mentioned. So, clear cut, proper financial planning, staying within one's means, and making sure that you are on top of your finances is so important for everybody. Now, when you really look at it, uh, teachers who become educationists or owners of trustees of education institutions typically are very good on academics. They know what to do with the children, but they really don't know how to muster the money. So typically we see situations where a wonderful school actually fails because of poor financial management. So careful financial planning is so important. I think there are certain characteristics that a school really has in terms of how the cash flows actually happen. A typical school would have a large amount of money coming in at the time of the starting of the academic year, because then the admission fees and a certain large chunk of money comes in then. Then there is a lull. And then towards the end, when the exams are actually happening, you will see the parents coming back and paying any arrears of the fees and so on and so forth. So you have a irregular cash flow inflow. But every month you have to pay your teacher's salary, the other staff salary, you have to pay for your electricity bill and stuff like that. How do you manage this particular mismatch? If you spend too much money at the beginning of the academic year because you have too much money, then you really don't have money for the lull period. So, you have to maintain your cash reserves. Do not spend too much money because you have money, but keep something for a rainy day for tomorrow. So, and most importantly, do not please overspend on the jazzy things which actually don't much add value, right? Which we spoke about earlier. Don't do because someone else is doing it. Stay within your resources, maintain your cash flow, and if you have taken a loan for your expansion, make sure that you pay your EMI every month, because one day default kills your credit score and you will not be able to build a third floor or the fourth floor of your building. You will stay at 2, right? The other factor is that you have to ensure that you spend most of your money on the teachers' salaries and not on the other infrastructure and other kind of facilities which actually do not add value to the school's core. They may be looking nice, but it will not bring you the second, third, fourth year's admission as we spoke about earlier. The last factor is that you should look for an expansion at a situation where your classrooms are full, and in a classroom of, let's say, 30 people, you are squeezing in the 35th and the 40th guy. So, when to say in a very simple way, then the students are forced to sit on the floor is the time when you look for an expansion, because you have established a certain credibility among the parent clientele that your school is good and that's why they're sending more and more children, but you don't have the infrastructure. That's the right time for you to take the leap of faith and build more classrooms, because you already have an existing clientele which you are not able to accommodate in your current facilities. So, if you go through some of these simple things, stay within your means, manage your cash flow mismatch is so important, and expand at the right time. If you maintain that, and of course, don't ever default on your credit score. Okay. You already mentioned about don't take too many informal loans and stuff like that, except for very rare situations. There are institutions like Profectus and certain other institutions which look at school as a core focus area for them to expand and to lend. There is a certain amount of social aspect which also is there, because we feel proud that a particular school which was in a rundown condition has today morphed into or changed into a wonderful school and have been able to increase their fees as well because of the better facility that they were able to afford due to the loan we have given to them, and has now gone up in terms of the league tables in the district and the area is so important. And it gives us a lot of happiness to see a school actually grow. So, taking loans is good. It's not a bad thing anymore, not even in schools. But take the loans, spend it in the wise manner. Make sure that you attract better children, more sticky children, and reward your teachers very well so that you're able to hold on to them. And put off money for tomorrow. You need capital. You need to have retained earnings so that you have part funding at least the next expansion. Those are the mantras that I would like to.
Interesting. That's a great piece of advice, word of wisdom from the finance man. Now, that compels me to ask one more question. What do financial institutions, banks, or NBFC like yours look for as a qualifier to lend money to any educational institution?
See, I think very important factor is that you have to plan ahead in advance, right? You will have a certain amount of corpus that you have built up because of your first stage or first phase of growth. Uh, how much of that is available with you for further investment? You can leverage whatever you have. Let's say you have 100 rupees in your corpus. You can take another 200 as loan and put that entire 300 into the second phase of growth. And the 300 eventually will lead to more reserves in your hand of probably 500, and use that 500 to borrow another 1000, make it into 1500. So, it kind of becomes uh, an exercise in aggregation, expansion, aggregation, expansion. So, this is the kind of cycle that you really follow. If this virtuous cycle kicks in the right manner, your growth story will not stop. Now, very important point that you mentioned when you first spoke about finances and all of that. Yes, unfortunately, in India, schools are very important sector, very well respected sector, but the banks don't lend because they are on the negative list because of past experiences and Certain states also have this problem of trust property not being mortgageable and stuff like that. So, these are some of the issues that we have to contend with. But good news is that beyond banks, the NBFC sector is now coming up significantly well. Definitely, we are saying that we will add as much value as we can to the schools. Uh, so, it's not that banks don't lend; they don't lend adequately. So, you will always have a gap. So, probably with your first resources, when you start to build a certain amount of corpus, you go to an NBFC, you borrow more, you grow your infrastructure, and over a period of time, you will have to have a mix of banks and NBFCs to fund your growth. Everything depends upon how you are managing your funds in the right way. Whether it's a bank or an NBFC, it doesn't matter. Most people will look at who are you. Is this a marginal business for you? Because if you have 10 other businesses and school is one of your things, probably the confidence level in the running of the school would be a little low. But if your livelihood is primarily 80, 90, 100% dependent on the school, I think that sends a very positive signal to the NBFC or the bank that is lending to you. So, how important is the school to you will be a question that any NBFC or bank would ask. And which means that you will not divert money away from the school, you will invest or reinvest the corpus fund back into the school for expansion. That's so important for me to get comfort on. So, establish the right kind of governance, establish the right kind of financial discipline, and do not treat school as a marginal business for you to run along with 10 other things. So, if those are the things that are there, I don't think funding from even a formal source of finance is not a problem. Informal sources are always there, but as you rightly said, it's a costly affair. But NBFCs and banks will be willing to lend for your growth and expansion should you stick to these basics. And we are very much happy to be of assistance to any of the schools that you may be assisting, or any of them that you have come across with, to guide them, if nothing else, right? Financing is a secondary part. At least the right kind of guidance can be provided to the right school.
Thank you. I think people like you are very rare in this industry, where people like you can guide school promoters as to how to use the money wise. Thank you so much.